Hello, hello. Welcome back to Wedding Wednesday. My name is Adriana, and today we are talking about the real tough questions, okay? All the questions you and your partner should be asking each other when you newly get engaged or right before you get married, or even if you just decide to commit your lives together. Before we dive into all the topics and the questions you guys should ask each other, please, I'm going to ask you, if you've been enjoying our podcast, hit the subscribe button because it really does help our podcast grow. And I would love a review too. I'm looking for some feedback on our podcast. The things you hate, the things you love, I want to hear it all. Of course, as long as it's respectful. I'm super happy to hear your feedback. With that, let's dive into our episode. Hey Montreal brides, I want to take a quick break to announce a giveaway. Imagine walking into a room filled with all the inspiration, vendors, and ideas you actually need to plan your dream wedding. That's exactly what's happening at the Elegant Wedding Bridal Show on Sunday, November 2nd, 2025, right here in Old Montreal. I'm giving away 4 lucky couples 2 free tickets to the show. All you have to do to enter is head over to our Instagram at Wedding Wednesday Pod and find all the instructions on our pinned video on our account. We're closing the giveaway on October 9th, 2025, so don't wait to enter. So, the very first thing you and your partner should discuss when you decide to commit your lives to each other, whether it be to move in together, get engaged, get married, is money. A hot topic. You have to discuss money. The reason why you have to discuss money is because the way your partner sees money and the way you see money will affect the way you guys manage your finances together in your partnership, in your relationship in the long haul. If you decide to have kids, you have to talk about how to plan for that financially. If you'd like to go on vacation 3 times a year, you need to have those conversations. So when it comes to money, really the number one question you should start with really is, do you want joint accounts, separate accounts, or hybrid? Meaning you each have a joint together and separately. I love this question because you need to understand as a couple together, like who is paying for what and what accounts is it going to come out of. So really important you guys discuss those details together once you decide to get married or get engaged. Next, you need to ask each other, what is the definition of splurging versus wasting money? So in your couple, I'm sure you're going to look at your joint expenses together, whether it be like house expenses, food, maybe travel together. And you're going to have to, in some capacity, put together some money every month, whether it be coming out of separate accounts or coming out of the same account. That money goes towards joint expenses, right? Ideally, in a perfect world, once your joint expenses are paid off, you have a little bit more disposable income to play with. And that disposable income is where you kind of need to discuss together where it's going to go. Whether you don't want to discuss where it's going to go because it's your own disposable income, then that's okay. But if you decide that you'd like to take vacations together and it's going to take more than what you're putting jointly together, you're going to have to save up more money than whatever you're putting together outside of what you're putting together in order to go on more than one vacation a year, let's say. That is something that you guys have to discuss together. So for you ask your partner, what is a splurge for you? What do you want to splurge on? And what feels like a waste of money to you? This question actually will change at every stage of your life, you know? So if you're, for example, in the season of life where you're looking to buy a house together and maybe you want to travel 3 times next year, maybe you are going to deem the expense of, I don't know, a designer handbag, let's say, as a waste at this point in time. But maybe in 5 years' time, you won't feel like traveling or you'll feel like going on less vacations, but you'll want to invest in a beautiful piece of designer jewelry or handbag for yourself at that stage. So this question is something that actually you're going to have to ask each other repeatedly. And you also need to decide whether or not the splurge items come out of your joint expenses or they come out of separate expenses. There is no right answer here. There's going to be actually some things probably that you're going to say, okay, for me, splurging on new clothes every season is worth it and will come out of my disposable income. And maybe for your partner, splurging on a really nice watch will be something that they want to do, but that will come out of their disposable income. And then together, maybe you're going to decide, okay, we'd like to get a new coffee machine, so we're going to splurge on that from our joint expenses together. So these are just conversations that you have to have in order to make sure you're really aligned. Like money is, I think, number one cause of divorce, at least amongst the number one causes of divorce. So ensuring you start that conversation way early will help you set yourself up for success. The next question I would suggest you guys ask each other is, how much debt are you carrying and what's the plan to tackle it, if there is a plan at all? When you get married, your partner's debt becomes your debt, and now you both have that debt to your name. For the most part, this could probably change depending on where you live, but let's just assume that that's kind of like the general rule for the sake of this example. And so if your partner has debt, you need to know how much debt, how it's going to get paid off, if you want to pay it off. Not everybody wants to pay off their debt, so that's something to think about too. And is it maybe something that you guys can tackle ahead of getting married, so you walk into your marriage without any debt? You know, these are all big, big conversations. You also have, I would tag on to this question, ask each other, what is good debt to you and what is bad debt to you? You know, good debt for some people can be a mortgage. Maybe that's a debt you both want to take on and you're willing to pay off together over time. Bad debt for others could be, for example, depending on who you are and how you see things, of course, but for example, could be a credit card bill that you haven't been able to pay off. So that could be the sort of conversation around debt that you could have with your partner, and it's really important that you tackle it together. Again, mostly because when you get married, the debt now becomes shared, and so if somebody's inheriting a debt, it could put a lot of pressure on a new marriage. The next money question I would suggest you discuss is, what are your saving goals? This is super, super important to talk about your saving goals. And this, like, we're talking about house, travel, kids, retirement. What do you want to save for? And in what order? And then taking a step further is, okay, let's say you choose your saving goal for the year. Every year you choose one saving goal, let's say. Okay, how much money are we both contributing to the saving goal over this course of the next year? So those are discussions that my fiance and I have all the time. Right now, our saving goal is our wedding. We literally have a saving goal for our wedding, and every month we put aside some money that will go towards that saving goal. After our wedding, we discussed already preliminarily, is that the right word? Or like to like have an idea of what we'd like to save next after the wedding. So we'd like to start thinking actually about our retirement. And I know we're super young, but time is on our side. We may as well start that conversation early. So those are just the types of things you want to ask each other when it comes to money. Because if you go into your marriage together and your partnership together with a clear mind around your finances, and it's something that you can have a meeting about once a year, I think you'll set yourselves up for a lot more success. The next topic that you want to discuss with your partner ahead of the big day is household and lifestyle. So what do you envision yourself living like in the next, it's hard to say the next 30 years, but let's just say the next 10 years. What does your life look like in your head? It's a really important question actually to ask your partner, because if one person is thinking, oh, I see myself, traveling every 3 months and not having kids and like having a remote job so I can travel and work on the go. And then the other person is thinking, oh, I'd like to have a full-time job where I get to go to the office 5 days a week, and maybe I'd like to start having kids in 2 years. This is a lifestyle that does not align. Those are lifestyles that don't align. And if you both find out that your lifestyles don't align, then you can have the conversation about, okay, well, what do we do to compromise our lifestyles so we can align, if we want to make this partnership work long term. So number one question here, I kind of already said one, but what the first question that we suggest to talk about is the lifestyle. The second thing is about like cleanliness. So what's your standard for being clean? Literally, like what is your standard for being clean? And sometimes somebody can say something and it's not the same as like when you live together, you actually see it in action. So this is honestly, when it comes to cleanliness of it all, something that you'll discover once you live together. But it is good to understand, like, what is your standard of cleaning? Example, how often do you want to clean in a month? Are you the type of person who likes to do batch cleaning 3 hours on a Sunday once a week? Or are you somebody that prefers to clean on the go? You made a big dinner in the kitchen and then you're going to clean up your whole kitchen on the go, Or do you see yourself cleaning every 2 weeks? Do you see yourself investing in a housekeeper? So those are the types of cleanliness questions that honestly sounds ridiculous when I'm speaking to this out loud, and it sounds ridiculous, but I've seen a lot of people fight over cleanliness and there's the standards. And so aligning on your standards is really important. The next question here when it comes to lifestyle and household is, how do we divide the chores so one person doesn't quietly become the house manager? This happens so often, especially when it comes to the standard of cleanliness. If one person in the couple has a higher standard of cleanliness, it often ends up being them that takes on the default house manager role. What is a house manager? If you're not living with your partner or you haven't moved out, lived alone, like to give you an idea of what a house manager kind of ends up being is the person who controls the list of chores that has to get done every week, the grocery list that has to be made every week, the meals of the week that get decided. If you have kids, managing who picks up who at what time, at what activity. That's what kind of a house manager, quote unquote, does. And it kind of sucks when one person ends up being the house manager 100%, especially if both people are working full time and have other things going on outside of just managing the household. So asking the question about how do we divide chores so it feels more equal or at least equitable is really important. And again, these are questions that will get reassessed. My fiance and I actually discuss these questions probably every 4 months. Sometimes if one of us feels an imbalance, we will say something and we will pivot. If one of us is in a season of working extra hard, we will discuss that and we will pivot. One person will take on more of the house stuff for that period of time until the workload alleviates, and then we can become equal, or at least, like I said, equitable. Really important there. Another great question is, what's your morning and nighttime routine and how will they clash or mesh? If one person is a night owl and the other person is a morning person, that is a lifestyle difference. Maybe the night owl wants to hang out in the evening and watch a movie every night, while the morning person prefers to go to bed at 9 p.m. and not watch a movie at night and get up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym. So because your lifestyles or your morning routines, nighttime routines will clash here, it's potentially, maybe it won't. If it aligns, then that's amazing. Like, that's a conversation you don't have to have. But if it does clash, then you have the next conversation, which is, okay, how do we compromise to bring our lifestyles a bit more together? Maybe Monday to Thursday, the morning person decides to stay the morning person, but maybe Friday through Sunday, the morning person will decide to stay up a little later and hang out with our partner, and then vice versa. Maybe Monday to Thursday, the partner who prefers to watch a movie will only watch a movie until 10 p.m. and then we'll go to bed earlier than they traditionally would. I don't know. This is just an example, but ultimately, putting together your nighttime and morning routines together, if you want to do these things together, is super doable. It's just a matter of discussing it. The next question is, how do you want to handle guests, parties, and holidays at home? I actually love this question. I have been to people's houses that are not hosts because they don't want to host. Sometimes I say I've been to people's houses who don't want to host, but that's not true, because whoever I go to their house, they want to host. I'm trying to say I know people who feel like their home is their sanctuary and therefore would prefer to not host. Versus other people, I will speak about myself here and my fiance. Both of us have a house. I want to have a house where we can host. We love to host. We love to throw parties. We love to have people come over. I love people coming over. I actually prefer when people come over than me going to their house. I just love having people over. If I want to throw the holidays, I do. If I want to have my friends over on a Friday night, I do. If my fiance wants to have his friends over on a Saturday night, he does. If we want to have our friends together, whatever. We love to have people over. And that's something that thankfully we didn't have to have an in-depth conversation about. We have other things in our relationship, like everybody, where we do have more deeper conversations about. But this is one thing where we 100% align and therefore didn't need to discuss further. But if you're in a relationship with somebody who loves to host and then the other person in that relationship prefers to keep their home as their sanctuary and never host, that could be a clash. So that's something to discuss for sure. Okay, we've covered household, lifestyle, and money. Next, you want to cover, this is a doozy, you guys, you want to cover the family and the in-laws. A moment of silence for this one. So what does that mean? Question number 1 here. You have to ask your partner, how often do we visit your parents and how often do we visit mine? Granted, if they live in another country, if your family members live in another country, this is not a conversation that really you were going to have because, well, you do, because maybe somebody wants to go and travel like every 3 months to visit their family, granted. But on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, asking each other how often you want to visit everybody's parents is key. If your expectation was to see your parents or your in-laws every 2 weeks and your partner's expectation was to see every week, that's something to discuss. So the next thing you want to ask each other is, what boundaries do we set with drop-ins, advice, or money requests? These are such hot topics, you guys. And if you listen to this episode and you go home tonight and you speak to your partner about these things, be prepared for a hard conversation. Something is going to bubble up that will cause you both to take a step back and say, okay, this is an area where we need to continue to have conversations around. I say this because I've had these conversations with my fiance, and some of these are easy conversations and some of them are not. So the boundaries around how do we set drop-ins advice, how do we set boundaries around drop-ins advice and money requests? This is a hard one, but I do urge you to have it. The next question to ask each other is, where do we spend holidays and do we alternate? The holiday questions is so hard. This is something we struggle every holiday season. We struggle with this every holiday season or every holiday period. Thanksgiving, New Year's, Christmas, Easter for us. These are conversations we have every few months when these holidays come up. And it's because we want to feel like we get to see everybody and everybody got a piece of us and we got a piece of them. And we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings by doing a holiday on a different day that year. And we haven't found our groove yet on our end personally with all these holidays where it's almost set in stone and it never changes. We're still every year kind of changing the plan. But this is a conversation you do have to have, and you can come to a happy medium. So we've been in some situations where some holidays, like Thanksgiving. So actually, Antoine's family loves to do a lunch on a holiday, and then my family likes to do dinner. So we've done 2 in a day. We've done that. It's not our ideal or preference because then we're just eating all day and we're also running around the city all day, and it's stressful on us and it's stressful on our family members who are waiting for us or don't want us to leave early. It kind of causes stress inevitably, but at least we get to do both. And then there's been other years where, let's say we'll do Christmas Eve with one family and Christmas Day with the other, or we've done some Christmases where we see both families Christmas Eve and we see both families Christmas Day, and that's super doable now that we don't have kids. But when we do have kids, obviously we're going to have to reassess that. Regardless, the conversation about the holidays is something that will come up repeatedly, and it is something that you do have to have. The next question is, how do we handle it when our families don't get along? I'm going to knock on wood for the sake of everybody watching this. I hope to God that your families get along. I don't have any advice on this, to be honest with you. I don't know what you do when families don't get along. I guess the only thing you can do is push through and communicate. If something goes wrong, you have to express how you feel. And it probably starts with communicating amongst each other in your couple about how you feel. And then from there, you decide, okay, who's kind of going to be the spokesperson on behalf of both of us for the situation, So that's probably the best how I would tackle it. But again, when you're in that situation, it's hard. It's harder to say when you're in that situation versus when you're not in it. So something to think about. The next topic that you and your partner absolutely should be discussing is relationships and intimacy. Really, really important to discuss intimacy and relationships and your different standards and expectations out of your relationship. So number one, what is your ideal intimacy life? Frequency, preferences, boundaries, really important to discuss that. The next thing you want to talk about to each other or ask each other is, how do we fight? This is such a good question. How do we fight? So for example, do you need space or do you need to talk about it immediately? Some people think that in the middle of an argument, when you walk away, it's because they don't want to have the argument. But really, the person walking away just needs a minute to compose themselves or think about what they're going to say next. So, but if you don't vocalize that or speak to each other about how you want to fight or do fight, then it can get misconstrued. So how do we fight is a great question. Next one is, what's your love language versus your apology language? I don't know what an apology language really looks like other than taking accountability for what you said and saying sorry. But if anybody has more info on apology language, would love to hear about it in the comments. Love languages, though, I've heard about, of course. There, I think, are 4 or 5. I think it's act of kindness, physical touch, quality time, is acts of service. That might be the same thing as acts of kindness. And I can't remember the 5th, if there is a 5th one. But I know Antoine and I actually have the same top 2 love languages, which is really ideal for us. But if we didn't, we would discuss that. And I would say, acts of service is my ideal love language. And so if you can make a point to think about that, it would make me feel more loved than you just like spending time with me, for example. So also communicating to each other how that looks like for the person who's not used to your love language is really key. The last question in the relationships category is, how do we keep dating each other after the wedding hype fades? I love this question. People, when they move in together, forget the wedding, regardless of when you move in together, whether it be after the wedding, before the wedding, whatever the case may be. People forget to keep dating each other when they live together. And I think that's how the roommate phase starts. That paired with probably, when you have kids, it's also difficult. You're tired. So that too probably contributes to the roommate phase. But I notice a lot of people when they move in together, they forget to keep dating each other. The one thing that Antoine and I have always done and have kept doing and have made a point to do, because I'm so type A and I'm able to ensure it keeps happening and we don't go with the flow with this, is a weekly date night. It's set in stone in our calendar. Every week we go on a date night. And actually most of the time, it's just at home. We don't actually go out for dinner as a formal date night. Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. It just depends. But on date night, that means for us, we also define the terms of what date night is so we keep dating each other. So date night looks like no phones at dinner. We don't call any of our family members. We're just present together. We sit together. We have dinner together. And then after dinner, we don't go off on our own and do our own thing. Some nights he will go watch his show. I will go watch mine. But on date night, if we're going to stay at home, we watch a show or a movie together, or we go on a walk together. We spend the night together and we make a point to spend the night together. So that way it ensures that we get our date night and our quality time together without letting life kind of getting in the way. So whatever that looks like for you, ask each other, what does it look like to keep dating each other after the wedding? The next topic to evaluate is your future and your values. So what does that look like? Question number 1, super huge question. Are you ready? This one's a bomb. Do you want kids? Yeah. And if so, how many? And how do you want to raise them? This is like a million questions in one, but number 1 question here is, do you want kids? And please, if you are not married yet, please have this question before you get engaged even. Because if you do not align on having kids, you're going to feel like if you want kids and your partner doesn't want kids, you're going to feel like you missed out on a huge part of your life. And that is not fair to you and is actually not fair to your partner. Your partner deserves to be with somebody whose values, at least for the most part, align and their life goals align. And you deserve to be with the same type of partner for you. So asking a question about do you want kids is huge, huge, huge. And sometimes the answer is not yes or no. Sometimes the answer is maybe. And that is okay. As long as you have an answer for it at this point in time, and you can keep asking each other that question, it's okay, as long as you have an answer for that question. And that answer can change, and it could change even after you get married, and that's okay too. But I do think you should have that question floating around in your relationship if it's not super clear for you. Now, if it is clear for you and it is a yes, then you need to ask each other, how many do you want? And how do you want to raise them? I will give you a really vulnerable and honest example. When Anton and I asked each other this question about how many kids we want, we agreed from very early we wanted kids. Then we asked each other how many we want. I want 2, he wants 3. I asked him, is it a deal breaker if you don't have 3? Thankfully, he said no. But if he had said yes, that would have been a really big problem, So making sure you know each other's limits too, and what is really a deal breaker for each other is super important. And then lastly, how do you want to raise your kids? This is actually a conversation. This is not a straightforward question. It is so intricately complicated that it is an ongoing question, at least in our relationship right now. We have a general idea of how we want our kids to be raised, but we're doing the exercise actually literally in real time. We had this discussion this week on our date night, funny enough, is our values. We asked each other, what are our values? Who do we value? How do we value things? Who do we value in our lives in the order? We each put that down on paper. And then we talked about, okay, how are we going to merge our values together? We came to a conclusion, but it's not set in stone. And it's a conversation we have to keep having. And it's paired with how we want to raise our kids. So this is a conversation that keeps recurring. And I believe 100% we will get to a place where we're both 100% happy with our conclusion. But it's a huge question. And I do eager you to ask it to each other before you get married, even if you know you want kids, because raising them, knowing how you want to raise them is super key here. The next question is, where do you see us living in 5 to 10 years? Super important to ask that. Maybe it's the city, maybe it's the suburbs, maybe it's with your family. To add on to that, okay, a question that I would eager you to ask is, are you comfortable or not having a family member move into our home at any point in our lives? Huge question to ask. The next one would be, what are your career dreams and how flexible are you with relocating or sacrifices? That's a big one too, because if you're somebody that sees themselves jumping from country to country over the course of 10 years and you don't want kids, and then you're with somebody who wants kids and sees themselves staying in the same suburban house for 10 years, there's going to create a clash there. So that's a big question to ask each other. And then lastly, what is your definition of success individually and as a couple? I love this question. Actually, Antonio and I have never asked each other this question. And that's a question, honey, if you're watching, we will ask each other. But I do think that that's actually a fantastic question to ask each other, because it helps clarify the values you both have, and also the vision you have for your life. So we discussed the big categories of what you should be discussing with your partner, which is money, household, family, intimacy, and your future. I eager you to take this episode, watch it with your partner, pause it at every question, and have a discussion, because it will help you get to that end conclusion. Hey Montreal brides, I wanted to take a quick break to announce a giveaway. Imagine walking into a room filled with all the inspiration, vendors, and ideas you actually need to plan your dream wedding. That's exactly what's happening at the Elegant Wedding Bridal Show on Sunday, November 2nd, 2025, right here in Old Montreal. I'm giving away 4 lucky couples 2 free tickets to the show. All you have to do to enter is head over to our Instagram at Wedding Wednesday Pod and find all the instructions on our pinned video on our account. We're closing the giveaway on October 9th, 2025, so don't wait to enter. If you'd like to chat more about any of these values, or you are struggling with a certain question that you and your partner are trying to uncover right now, feel free to send it to us at hello@weddingwednesdaypod.com. I would love to answer you and to give you some feedback as well. It stays completely anonymously, so you don't have to worry about anyone knowing who it is who submitted that question. Please, I'm going to ask you to subscribe, rate, review, let me know what you think of the podcast. I would love to hear some feedback. And with that, I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.